Pregnant woman texts for help before labor. In elevator shocked when a billionaire responds, "Please someone help me. I'm stuck in the elevator and my baby's coming." The message was typed with trembling hands, her vision blurred by sweat and fear. Claire Thompson had never felt more alone. 38 weeks pregnant, she had only planned a quick stop at the downtown office tower where she worked reception. But fate had other plans. At 11:37 p.m., the elevator jolted, lights flickering, and then froze between floors. Her phone battery clung to 9%, her contractions sharp and merciless. She typed out a desperate text into a random emergency number. Steel. The elevator hummed, lurched, and died. Claire Thompson's breath snagged. The lights flickered overhead, steadied, then dimmed into a stubborn glow. 38 weeks of carrying a life inside her, and the night she had promised herself would be ordinary home, a shower sleep cracked in two. Another contraction hit. Tight, sharp, insistently timed. She braced one hand against the panel, the other pressed to her belly. "Not now," she whispered. "Not here." Her phone read 9% battery. 2 bars. No signal for a call, only the thin lifeline of the building's emergency text system, one she'd never used, a number buried in a laminated sticker near the panel. Fingers trembled. She typed anyway. "Help! I'm stuck in the elevator. I think I'm in labor. Please!" she sent. The tiny arrow blinked. Delivered. Silence. The kind that makes sound louder. Her breathing the tick of a cooling vent, the faint mechanical groan of cables holding a metal box between floors and sky. The reply arrived like a knock. "Where are you? Which car?" Her throat tightened. She squinted at the etched plate above the buttons. "Car B, between 27 and 28. A beat. Then, "It's Miles Donovan. I'm in the building. I'm coming down. You're not alone." Claire stared. Miles Donovan. She knew the name the way the city knew its own skyline, glossy articles in elevator screens. A face paired with phrases like, "Turn around, King," the Donovan Fund acquisitions. The top floors of this tower were his. He lived in the penthouse like a rumor. He moved markets with a call. Her next breath shook. She didn't care about headlines. She cared about the next contraction. She cared about not delivering on a carpet with a maintenance schedule. The screen dimmed to save itself. 8%. Another contraction, longer this time. She sank to the floor, back against a cool steel wall, knees bent, hands on the slope of her stomach. The baby pushed, rolled, settled. A private storm. "Hey," she murmured, voice barely there. "We're okay. Help's coming." Help. The word pulled memory loose. Earlier, Claire had stayed late to finish payroll. Reception by day, numbers by necessity. The building's night cleaners had waved goodbye at 10:40. The security guard had tipped his cap. She'd cradled the elevator's handrail with one palm, balancing the swollen ache of late pregnancy and the stubborn pride of doing it alone. People asked about the father. She said little. The truth was simple and complicated: a boyfriend who loved her softly until life got hard, then disappeared into his own fear. No letters, no apology. Only space, and in that space, quiet resolve. She'd made her own appointments. She'd toured the maternity ward, alone had marked the route from this tower to the hospital on a bus map and in her mind. She knew which friend was on call for a taxi, if it came to that. She did not plan for an elevator to forget how to be an elevator. Between floors. The doors groaned wider, an inch, then 2. Claire squinted against the glare of fluorescent light, her body caught between relief and another contraction clawing at her. The EMTs crouched, voices clipped and professional, but it was Miles's face she focused on. His eyes calm and unshaken anchored her in the chaos. "Easy," he said, steadying the air as if it were a rope he could hand her. "We'll guide you out when the pain drops. No rush." The EMT closest leaned forward with a hand out. "Ma'am, when you're ready, we'll slide you onto this board. Just keep breathing." Claire nodded, but her grip on the rail didn't loosen. Another contraction surged, ripping her focus inward. She bent forward, forehead damp against the cool metal lips parted as she drew air the way Miles had coached her. In, out, in, out. Miles crouched so she could see him through the widening seam. "Look at me, Claire. You're not in that box anymore. You're already halfway out. You're safe." Something in his voice, the unwavering cadence, the certainty pulled her through. The contraction ebbed, leaving her trembling, and she managed a small nod. "Okay," she whispered. The EMTs slid the board across the narrow gap-bridging elevator to lobby. "On your count," one said. Miles didn't look away from her. "Your pace, Claire. We're right here." She shifted one slow move at a time. Knee to board, hand to edge. Her belly loomed heavy, awkward. For a terrifying second, the carpeted floor tilted in her vision, and she thought she might fall, but Miles's hand shot out palm open, steady, without touching, until she reached for him. Her fingers locked around his wrist. Warm, solid. "That's it," he said, voice low enough that it seemed meant only for her. One more step. And then she was across, eased onto the gurney as the EMTs secured straps and checked vitals. The fluorescent lobby swallowed her whole, all marble and glass, nothing like the steel box that had nearly been her delivery room. Her body shuddered with adrenaline, but she forced her gaze back to Miles. He stood only a foot away, hands still braced on his knees from where he had steadied her. For a moment, billionaire and receptionist existed without titles. Just two people suspended between survival and something more fragile, trust. "You did it," he said softly. She swallowed against the lump in her throat. "We did it." The EMT clipped a monitor to her finger. "Ma'am, your contractions are 3.5 minutes apart. We need to get you to the hospital quickly." Claire nodded, though the reality churned in her stomach. The hospital had always been part of the plan, just not like this, not strapped on a gurney with strangers, her body already fighting a battle she hadn't fully prepared for. As they wheeled her towards the doors, her phone buzzed weakly. 5% battery. A single message from Maya lit the screen. "Outside, I'm here, hold on." Relief pricked her eyes. She let out the emergency room arrival. The siren cut through the night like a blade. Claire lay strapped to the gurney, her knuckles white around Maya's hand as the ambulance jolted over potholes. The contractions came harder now, closer together, a relentless tide that didn't care about distance or traffic lights. Her body felt hijacked, but her mind was stuck on the last thing she'd seen before the doors closed. Miles Donovan standing in flashing red light, looking nothing like the photographs that had filled business magazines. He hadn't looked untouchable. He'd looked determined. The ambulance screeched to a halt. Doors flew open and fluorescent hospital light poured in. The EMTs rolled her inside, voices sharp and clinical, rattling off vitals to a nurse with a clipboard. Maya jogged alongside her free hand, gripping Claire's shoulder. "Almost there," Maya whispered, though her own eyes brimmed with fear. "You're almost there, Claire. Just hold on." The sliding glass doors hissed open. The ER swallowed them, bright, loud buzzing with the weight of dozens of emergencies colliding. Claire tried to focus on one thing, one voice, but the flood was too much. Doctors barking orders, monitors beeping, the squeak of sneakers on polished floors. And then, over it all, she heard it. Claire. Her head turned weakly, and there he was. Miles. No ambulance had brought him, but somehow he was already inside, striding toward her like the chaos couldn't touch him. Security had tried to keep him at bay. She saw the faint scuffle of a hand raised in a hesitation, but one clipped word from him had opened the way. He fell into step beside her gurney just as he had in the lobby. Not leading, not commanding, simply there. "You made it," he said, not out of relief, but as if he had willed it. "So," Claire let out a shaky laugh between breaths. "Of course I did. Still, pregnant." Another contraction hit, making her arch, and Miles's hand tightened briefly on the side rail of the gurney, his jaw clenching as though he could absorb some of the pain. The nurse glanced between them. "Family." Maya opened her mouth, but Miles spoke first. His voice was even certain. "Support." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. The gurney pushed forward again through a set of double doors into the maternity wing. The room was stark white walls, harsh lights, machines waiting like silent witnesses. The EMTs transferred Claire to a hospital bed, nurses quickly attaching monitors, checking dilation, speaking a flurry of words. She half caught 5 centimeters, regular contractions, fetal heart strong. Claire tried to focus on breathing on Maya's palm pressing hers, but her gaze kept pulling toward the breaking point. Claire's world had narrowed to seconds, breaths, and pain. Each contraction ripped through her body like fire, leaving only fragments of herself behind. She gripped Miles's hand so hard she was certain he'd bruise, but he didn't flinch. He only anchored himself steady, as if he'd been waiting his whole life to hold someone together in their undoing. "Breathe," Claire Maya whispered, at her side stroking damp hair from her forehead. "You're doing it. You're stronger than you know." But Claire shook her head, chest-heaving tears spilling hot and fast. I can't do this. It's too much." The doctor checked quickly, his expression clinical but urgent. "She's 9 centimeters. Almost there, but the pressure's intense. Stay with us, Claire." Almost. That word felt like a curse. Almost meant she wasn't finished suffering. Almost meant more pain before she could meet her child. "Listen to me," Miles said suddenly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a low thunder. Claire's eyes snapped to his blurry with tears. "You are doing it," he told her. "Every breath, every second. You've already done the impossible, survived what most people couldn't. Don't stop now." Something in his eyes made her falter. There was no pity there, no distance, just raw truth. He wasn't speaking as a billionaire or a stranger. He was speaking as a man who knew what it was to fight against breaking. The next contraction came like a storm tearing through her. Claire arched a scream breaking from her lips. Nurses rushed closer, monitors beeping faster. Maya clutched one hand, Miles the other. Claire felt ripped in half. And then faintly she heard something in Miles's voice she hadn't before, a fracture. He whispered near her ear, low enough that only she could hear. "Don't let go. Please. I couldn't save her, but I can stay for you." Her eyes fluttered open, stunned. What she croaked, breathless through the pain. But Miles shook his head, jaw tight, eyes glassy, before he looked away. She had no chance to ask more. The contraction swallowed her, her body convulsing with the force of transition. But the words lodged in her heart. I couldn't save her. Who? Outside, during a brief pause in the chaos, Claire caught Miles's gaze again. His mask had slipped. For once, he wasn't the composed tycoon, the untouchable figure from magazine covers. He looked like a man carrying ghosts. "You've Lost someone, she whispered hoarsely. His silence was answer enough. Maya glanced between them, confused, but a nurse interrupted. She's ready. 10 centimeters. Time to push. The word sent a shock of terror through Claire. Ready. She wasn't ready. She wanted to run to hide, to make time stop. Miles bent low voice, steady but urgent. Look at me. Don't think about fear. Don't think about failing. Just think about one thing, you and your baby. That's all that matters now. Claire sobbed once, then nodded weakly. The pushing began. Hours felt like minutes, like the aftermath. The hospital room settled into a fragile calm. Machines hummed, the fluorescent lights dimmed, and Claire's daughter slept in the bassinet, wrapped tightly in a pink blanket that seemed far too small to hold something so enormous, life itself. Claire lay against the raised bed, exhausted, her body aching as though it had been dismantled and rebuilt. Every muscle screamed, but the sound of her baby's soft breathing smoothed the edges of pain. Maya had stepped out to get food, leaving her alone with Miles. He hadn't moved much since the delivery. He sat in a chair near the window, sleeves rolled up tie, discarded, his posture rigid yet weary. His gaze was fixed on the sleeping baby, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Finally, Claire broke the silence. Her voice was hoarse. You stayed. Miles's eyes flicked to hers. I told you I would. She let out a quiet laugh, dry and raw. Most people would have disappeared the second the ambulance doors closed. I'm not most people, he said, almost too sharply, then softened his tone. Besides, I needed to know she made it. That you both did. Claire studied him. Beneath the expensive suit, now wrinkled from hours of wear, beneath a name she had only known from headlines, was a man who looked profoundly human-haunted, perhaps, but human. Why me? She asked quietly. Why answer my text? You could have ignored it. Let security handle it. You're, she gestured vaguely. You. Miles leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling for a long moment. His voice, when it came, was low. Because 2 years ago, someone else's text didn't get answered in time. The words struck hard. Claire didn't push. She remembered what he'd confessed in the delivery room. His wife, complications, loss. The silence that followed carried its own weight, heavy and fragile. After a while, Miles rose and approached the bassinet. He stood over the newborn, expression unreadable. Then, almost reverently, he whispered, She looks like a fighter. Claire smiled faintly. She had no choice. He glanced at her, and for the briefest moment, his lips curved in the smallest shadow of a smile. Maya returned with sandwiches and coffee, bustling in with the relief of someone who needed to be useful. She froze when she saw Miles still in the room. You're still here? Miles inclined his head. I gave my word. Maya set the food down and muttered under her breath, Most billionaires don't hang out in maternity wards. Claire chuckled weakly. He's not most billionaires. Maya shot her a look, 1,000 questions brimming in her eyes, but said nothing. She perched on the bed's edge, stroking the baby's tiny hand, tears shimmering. Claire drifted in and out of light sleep. Each time she opened her eyes, Miles was there, sometimes standing near the bassinet, sometimes pacing slowly, sometimes staring out the window, as though trying to reconcile the city skyline with the new world inside the room. By morning, Claire's daughter had a name, Lily. The bond grows. The days after Lily's birth blurred into exhaustion and tenderness. Claire adjusted to the rhythm of newborn cries, feedings at odd hours, nurses checking vitals, and the quiet terror of being responsible for someone so small. She had expected to face it alone with Maya, visiting when she could. What she hadn't expected was Miles. He returned every day. At first, Claire thought it was a coincidence, some leftover sense of obligation. Maybe he was the kind of man who couldn't let go of unfinished business. But as the days stretched, it became undeniable. Each morning, when she woke from fractured sleep, there would be a knock at the hospital door. And there he was, coffee in hand, sometimes flowers, sometimes nothing but himself. "You'll spoil me," she muttered, once her hair a mess, eyes rimmed red. Miles simply handed her the cup. "You need coffee more than anyone I've ever met." He didn't come with speeches or dramatic gestures. He came with silence, with presence. When Lily cried, he didn't flinch. When Claire fumbled with diapers or bottles, he stepped back, only offering help when she admitted defeat. One afternoon, Claire sat on the bed, struggling to get Lily to latch. Frustration boiled over tears, stinging her eyes. "I'm failing already. She won't eat. What if I can't do this?" Miles crouched in front of her, careful not to intrude. "You're not failing. You're learning. And she's learning too." His voice was quiet, steady. "Give yourself permission not to be perfect." Claire laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You've probably never failed at anything." Something flickered in his eyes, raw and sharp. "I've failed at the most important thing there is." She froze, remembering his words in the delivery room. "I couldn't save her." Silence stretched between them. Then Lily let out a tiny sigh, as if reminding them what mattered. Claire shifted, trying again, and this time it worked. Relief flooded her. She glanced up, only to find Miles watching with something that looked dangerously like reverence. When Claire was discharged, she assumed that would be the end. He would return to his towers of glass and steel, and she would return to her cramped apartment, her quiet struggle. But Miles didn't disappear. On her first day home, juggling Lily's carrier and hospital paperwork, Claire nearly dropped everything in the lobby of her building. A familiar hand caught the strap just in time. "Miles," she gasped. He gave a small shrug. "You didn't think I'd let you do this alone, did you?" She blinked at him, bewildered. "You don't even know me." His gaze was steady. "I know enough." He began visiting in the evenings. Not intrusively, always asking if it was okay, always leaving if Claire looked too tired. But when he stayed, the weight of her world lightened. He held Lily so Claire could shower. He picked up groceries without being asked. He repaired the flickering light in her kitchen without a word. One night, after rocking Lily to sleep, Claire found him lingering by the crib, watching the baby's chest. Confessions. The evening was quiet except for the rhythmic creak of the rocking chair. Claire sat with Lily nestled against her chest, humming softly, though her mind was far away. Miles sat across the room, scrolling absently through his phone, though his gaze kept drifting back to them. Something unspoken hung in the air. It had been building for weeks, woven through late-night feedings, small acts of kindness, and shared silences that felt heavier than words. Claire couldn't take it anymore. "Miles," she said, suddenly her voice sharper than intended. He looked up, brow raised. "Yes." She hesitated, then forced the words out. "Why are you still here?" Miles blinked, surprised. "I thought I'd made that clear." "You haven't." She shifted Lily into the crib, her hands trembling slightly. "People don't just show up like this. Billionaires don't spend their nights holding bottles and fixing leaky faucets. You should be in boardrooms, not in my apartment. So tell me why you're here, really." Miles set his phone aside, leaning forward. His voice was low, steady. "Because I want to be." That's not enough, Claire snapped, her exhaustion and fear boiling over. You don't even know me. I'm nobody, Miles. Just a woman who got stuck in an elevator on the worst night of her life. And you... She broke off, shaking her head. You belong to another world. He rose slowly, his height filling the small living room. But his expression wasn't cold, wasn't distant. It was raw. You think this is about worlds, about money? His voice cracked slightly. Claire, I stayed because the night I found you, I found myself too. For the first time since she died, I didn't feel like a ghost. The words silenced her. I thought I was beyond saving. Miles continued, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. I buried myself in work, in silence, in empty penthouses. But then you called for help, and for once I could answer. I could make a difference. And when I saw Lily, his voice faltered. It felt like being given a second chance. Claire's heart pounded. Tears blurred her vision. Miles. He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. You think you're nobody, but to me, you're the only reason I'm still breathing. The confession hit her like a tidal wave. Every guarded wall she had built cracked under its weight. She wanted to deny it, to push him away, but the truth was already there, pulsing in her chest. You scare me, she whispered. His brows furrowed. Why? Because I'm starting to need you, she admitted, voice trembling. And I can't afford to need anyone. Not after everything. Not when Lily depends on me. Miles's expression softened. He closed the final distance, though he didn't touch her. Needing someone doesn't make you weak, Claire. It makes you human. The words pierced her, leaving her breathless. Silence stretched heavy with everything unsaid. Claire's pulse thundered in her ears. She looked at him, really looked at the man stripped of his armor, at the grief etched in his eyes, at the fragile hope, the invitation. Naomi tried to tell herself nothing had changed after that drive. That the late-night coffee, the neon-drenched booth, the way Alexander had looked at her, none of it mattered. But the truth clung to her like the smell of the diner's grease-stained air. Something had shifted. The following night, the lobby was too quiet. Midnight came and went. 12:45. 1:10. Naomi tried not to watch the doors. She stacked papers. She straightened pens. She reread the same page of her book 3 times. At 1:30, the revolving doors finally spun. Alexander entered without his usual armor. No suit jacket, no polished shoes. Just a dark sweater, sleeves pushed to his elbows, hair slightly tousled, as if he'd fought with sleep and lost. "You're late," Naomi said, though her voice betrayed more relief than reprimand. He smirked faintly. "Testing to see if you'd miss me." She rolled her eyes, hiding the smile tugging at her mouth. "You're insufferable, and yet you're still here." She pretended to busy herself with the kettle, though her hands trembled slightly as she poured. When she set the mug before him, he didn't reach for it. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, gaze steady. "Naomi," he said quietly, "come with me tomorrow night." Her brows furrowed. "Come where?" "My world. Not the headlines, not the skyscrapers. The real places, the ones I don't show anyone. I want you to see who I am when no one's watching." Naomi froze. Her mind split into warnings. He's your boss's boss's boss. This is madness. This is a story that doesn't end well. But her chest betrayed her, tightening with something closer to longing than fear. "Alexander," she began. "Don't say no yet," he interrupted gently. "Just think. You've given me nights I didn't know I needed. Let me give you one in return." His eyes held hers unflinching, and she realized this wasn't seduction. It was surrender. The next night, Naomi stood outside the lobby coat, pulled tight city lights stretching endless above her. She told herself 100 times to walk away, that she wasn't this woman, that she didn't follow billionaires into unknown shadows. And then the black car pulled up. Alexander stepped out not in silk or tailored armor, but in the same dark sweater, his expression careful, almost tentative. "You came," he said softly. She exhaled, half a laugh, half a tremor. "I'm still not sure why." "Maybe because you want to know if I'm worth it," he murmured. The car slipped through the city like a secret. But instead of the penthouse towers, Naomi expected, Alexander drove toward the edges where the lights dimmed, where the buildings grew older, where the city's noise thinned.